Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours of Education. We're now breaking these Saturdays up because there's so many of them. So we are breaking the streams up here, and so we'll do that. And I'm going to hand this off to Sky, and we're discussing, of course, education. So every week we talk about education. We answer questions and brainstorm, and I've got lots of brainstorming to do today with all of you, hopefully. So I've got a clear and present opportunity that I'm trying to figure out, and so we'll see what people have to say about it. Anyway, but let's go ahead and jump to the questions first. Go ahead, Bill.
Sure. We have a couple in early here. Chris Clark from the panel often says, I suspect that many teachers are somewhat demoralized at the end of this difficult year. What can we do as parents, community members, tech professionals, and so forth to help teacher morale and to shift the narrative of the next school year in a more positive direction?
Go ahead, Tony.
I know for some school systems, it's already too late, but there is a teacher appreciation week, and those things need to be emphasized because those people, those teachers who can retire are retiring, and those who are not able to retire are looking to shift into different forms of work. And so anything that we can do in terms of increasing the morale would be beneficial at this time.
Go ahead, Jason.
I know for me, the best thing that's helped me out when it comes to parents and having interactions with me has been asking me questions and yearning for answers rather than coming in with assumptions. So I know that a lot of teachers on our campus have been hammered by a bunch of administrators, a bunch of other staff members.
What is your campus, K through 12, college?
It is high school. I'm high school, Vista Merida High School in Merida, California. But the biggest problem that we have is that there are a lot of parents that come in just with assumptions, saying that their kid said this or their kid said that, or they heard something from someone else. If they came in and just asked questions and were truly looking for understanding as opposed to trying to get something out of it that they want to get out of it, that takes a huge burden off our shoulders. And then from the administrator's perspective, really understanding just how much teachers have to do and really trying to figure out a way to compartmentalize things, because teachers are being asked to do a lot.
Yeah, the one thing that I will say is that what I am getting clear of talking to a couple different administrations is that there's a lot of people trying to figure out what to do next. And so there's a lot of opportunity and we'll talk about some of that today. So to innovate right now because there's a little bit, the cash is a little looser than it is in a normal school, because of all the money coming in. People have some discretion on where they spend that money. And I think there's some opportunities there to, innovate and find new ways of doing things as opposed to just doing more of the same. Go ahead, John. I can't hear you.
Double mute.
Double mute.
Can you hear me now? Sorry about that.
Yeah, we can.
The teaching profession was having a decline in enrollment in teacher education programs prior to the pandemic. So
Right.
I think one of the biggest challenges is the pandemic was an additional stress, but there were a lot of issues in terms of salary, in terms of housing, in terms of community interest in becoming a teacher that didn't go away with the pandemic, was only aggravated. So I think we need to not only solve some of the pandemic problems, but really go to the problems that we were having with teacher education prior to the pandemic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Good. Roscoe?
Yeah, our school's basically put on, we're going to try and look new. We're trying to upgrade things, like benches and stuff that were ratty looking have been replaced. And this is what they're spending COVID money on. They're trying to spend it on things that both the people that are on the campus as well as the students that'll be coming back to the campus have a sense that it didn't just, go into a dead state, that there was actually advancement going on. There was thinking about them coming back. So that's what we're trying to do.
And go ahead, Dan.
Just we I think I've said it before, we have these community meetings, and when we were all in person, there would maybe be 150 show up for the snacks and the see friends, but these community meetings have been once every 2 weeks online, and 450 people always attending. And in the chat window, everyone is promoting everyone, great jobs, and this is not going to go away. I think there might still be people there for the snacks, but many more will attend this way, and just being able to promote each other in the communication.
Next question.
Jason Sipe of Murrieta, California, who's here in the panel, I believe, for the first time today. And welcome, Jason. Says, for less than $10,000, what does a faculty recording studio look like? Include audio, video, lighting, hardware, software, and so forth.
One of the things that I would strongly recommend in this area is making sure that, and I've said this before in other shows, but make sure that everything is IP controllable. So you want to be able to make everything remote controllable, because you want to make sure that that studio can be run from someone in another room, another building, another state, another country, and that is all very, very doable. So once if your lights are all DMX, you can now drive the color, the brightness, everything else that's there. Same thing with the mixers, same thing with the switchers. So I highly recommend for an education studio under $10,000 to think of Blackmagic as your baseline for video. And the reason for that is that they have an API. And so, they're cost effective, and they have an API that sits underneath them, which means that as you innovate, or as other people innovate, if you saw earlier today, we looked at that MixFX Pro, which is basically taking over the ATEM Mini. Someone else has built a $50 app that makes it better. You can't do that with Sony. You can't do that with a lot of the other ones. You're stuck with whatever they created. Even vMix and TriCaster and everything else is stuck with their version of how this works, as opposed to any version of how this works. And so because of that, there's a ton of innovation that we use all the time, because we can access that hardware directly. So that's my recommendation would be to go down that path. I right now, if left to my own devices, would get 6Ks, a couple 6Ks. I think that you need 2 really, and then you can decide how many more you get. But 2 or 3 is probably. I think the 6K Pro is not something you need in a studio. I think a 6K is fine. The 6K Pro, I don't think it adds anything, because again, what I would be doing with them is, if I can afford it, I would put one of them on a cost-effective PTZ. But what you really need is a straight on that the teacher can talk to. You need a one that's a close-up that's going to look down at something, and then possibly one other one if you want to have discussions. But what I recommend is not to do discussions in the studio. So if you do discussions, you bring people in over Zoom to talk to them. And the real function about that is that what you want is your teacher talking to another person, and you want your audience to intercept that signal between them, because it's much more personal. So when you have a teleprompter, when both people are on teleprompters talking to each other, the audience is sitting in between them, intercepting that signal in a very intimate way. As soon as, this is the limitation of the physical world, as soon as you put someone at a table like this and they're talking to each other, the audience is on the outside. So the question is the audience on the outside, or are they on the inside? And there's no way to do that when 2 people are in the same room. So if I was building a studio, I used to build I built studios for Google, Facebook, a bunch of other people. And so I used to build them so we could have 3 or 4 people in there and everything else. I wouldn't do that anymore. I would do it as a direct address. I'd build multiple studios and then tie them together and have them talk to each other through the multiple studios if I was going to do that. But I wouldn't, I wouldn't let them be in the same room at the same time. I would also, you want to think about how you have wireless transmission. Again, telestrators. This is just a Wacom tablet and a Mac. There's nothing. The app. I keep on running to dead ends, but the app will come out this summer, and so will be available by the next school year for a variety of reasons. But you can use any art program to do that, and so the telestrator is key. Having whether it's an ATEM Extreme, I would probably, in a studio environment, I would get an ATEM Extreme is probably a good one for you to go down as far as that goes. It's probably all you need for a basic studio. If you're saying under $10,000, that's where I'd go. I'd get an X32 mixer is the right thing, right amount of power for the investment. Anyway, go ahead, Jason.
Just to kind of follow up, because I asked that question, what I'm really looking at doing is finding a space or creating a space where teachers can come in and either record their lectures or have the interaction with their students and with their audience. We're actually looking at doing some sort of virtual at-home classes next year. And really what I want teachers to do is to be able to walk in, know exactly where their cameras are at, be able to hit their buttons, keep it simple as possible, take the recording with them and leave.
And the thing to remember there is that, again, if you add HyperDex and so on and so forth, you can do that. It's a good start, in that process. And with all of this stuff, again, what we've done with a lot of the studios that we built is we abstracted the switcher away from the teacher and we built control panels. We literally machined them. They're not that expensive to machine. It looks really cool, but they're not expensive. You can send out a series of EPSs to a company that will put them into a CNC and just machine it. It's like the computer, and when you tap on that, that's an Arduino controller talking back to the switcher and doing what it needs to do. So they don't have to see all the buttons that we see in an Extreme. They just see these big metal buttons that they push that light up and do the pretty thing and everything else. And so, but I would, the user interface, to your point, is everything. And the other thing to start looking at that we're starting to experiment with is using eyeline. So we're working on a situation where when you look up, it cuts to you, and when you look down, it cuts to whatever you're showing. So then it just we're trying to get to a point where someone can do a presentation. It's automatically cutting back and forth. I would not recommend picture-in-picture. Like, I'll just let you know, like, it's not a good idea because you want the violent action of an edit. Your brain doesn't, when you're looking at a full screen, part of what keeps your attention is you're doing something that your brain's not used to looking at. When you go back to a static situation with a picture-in-picture, you basically allowed the brain to go back to sleep. So you just have to remember that the edit between the two is really important. People do that because they don't know where to edit. But it's easy if the teacher gets good at it, they can look down when they're going to do something, look up when they want to talk to people, and they can either do that. If you get used to it, you do it all the time. I do it all the time, but you can get it to a point where you could have a student sitting back there just going click, 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 click. I can teach someone to do a presentation-based edit, and it doesn't hurt the students to learn how to do a video production. Go ahead, John, and then Bill.
There's two things I look at, Jason. I look at, it's Penn State, they call it the One Button Studio or the DVE store. Roscoe put that in the Makana. And with Penn State, they have like 10 of them, I think, and literally have thousands of students go through. They walk in, load a PowerPoint or not, push one button, and they get a recording. So for some people, that's really a good way to go. And I know the DVE store is now enhancing it more into that you can start controlling that remotely. And the engine in that one is Mimo Live. So it could be a very simple where you just walk in and push one button, but with the right skill set, you can turn it into a more robust studio. But the first thing I do, I'm excited about the new Cinemaker Director with Zoom. Before you spend $10,000, get 4 iPhones and a Mac Mini and see if they really know how to use 2 cameras and how to do an overlay and how to do a graphic. I think you'll get a better sense of what are the important parts to put into it. And then obviously the studio Alex has is the way to go eventually. But
well, and again, I look at, if you have money to spend right now, I would try to get it. This is for education. I'll just say it over and over again. This is the most money you'll ever have ever. So spending into it is the right, because right now what we're seeing with school systems is they're spending into all kinds of crazy things that aren't going to make any difference. And so if they're going to spend into things that aren't making any difference, you ought to spend into things that actually are going to show up, on as content. So, and I will admit that I view almost any money spent on something that isn't generating content to be a waste of money. So
we have a history in education of spending money on things that don't pan out.
That don't come out as educational content. Yeah. So So if you're going to spend the money, the only thing I would say is that when you buy into an ATEM system, you're buying into an ecosystem that will keep on growing over and over and over again. A lot of the software ones is less expensive and they'll get you there quickly, but you'll hit the cap really quickly too. And that's the challenge that you have with it. There'll be a lot of things you can't do at that point. And the other thing that I would keep on looking at from a wetware perspective is always to remember that it's easy to make content or easy to watch it. It is never both, ever. And so when we say, oh, we can put this, my issue with a lot of these things, like we're going to make it really easy for people to drop the content down, is that as a person who has tried to watch that, I can't even make it through more than 15 minutes of LinkedIn. like I'm just like, so I use LinkedIn all the time, but I only watch the piece that I need, so, and I do that a lot, but I think we need to think about, again, don't forget that you have lots of high school students who are probably very technical, who would love to play with gear, and finding the ones that you can build much more complex events if you're willing to train them, to execute, and that, you can, if we're going to get Tony Farley on here to talk about it, but Tony has built, he built a proposal and raised $1.5 million and has a full studio in a public high school in California, San Leandro.
In the old days, it used to be the people who ran the AV equipment. We just have to have a new generation of the students who like to do the AV to become media producers.
And it's never been better. So much better than it used to be when we had VHS tapes and horrible cameras. Go ahead, Bill.
I'd start with space assessment because you have a lot of possibilities on a high school campus, but people are going to want to say, let's make it close to where the teachers hang out. I think that's the wrong approach. I would start with saying, what's the quietest, darkest place that I can get access to? Because that lets me have zero audio, particularly walking hallways full of people, to interrupt something. And where can I get a little ceiling height? In my high school, we actually had a theater and there was a storeroom for our flats. And I would have just taken over that because it's away from everybody, had a high ceiling. I could turn in and make it into anything I wanted. And people would come to do their pieces rather than just stepping out of their office into their world of interruptions and everything else. So try to think outside of that kind of box. Look at the space first.
Always be careful of easy. With all of these things, because what you want it to be is, set up at least the foundation for great talk.
So I think, as you're looking at the not asynchronous kind of recording of things, I'm sorry if there's a little background noise, but we get an ATEM ISO of some variety so that you can record all of it and have all the tracks, and then have them switch it live, like maybe it's asynchronous and synchronous, and then they can make that they can use that in two ways. They can make that into a much more polished piece later by bringing in the XML file into the editing software, and I think there's just like a very large ramp up of what can happen, even if they don't know how to do it right away.
And again, really lean on the skill set of your students. I think that the other thing to remember is that regardless of what the rest of the school works on, I would highly recommend that the content is built on Keynote, because you can make Keynote very easily look as good as video. Like you can, the transitions, the process, everything else. So having a handful of computers that can do that is really valuable, because it's just way better than the other presentation tools. Like it's not close. And so as someone who, like, we for years have just, here's your presentation of PowerPoint, and then we move it all to Keynote and fix it, and then they're like, I've never had a presentation that looks so good, and we're like, Chris.
I want to go a little bit beyond the question of what the gear would look like and the space, to say that it's really important, in my opinion, to set up your most creative and cooperative teacher to make the first video it knocks it out of the park, and do it 2 or 3 times so that you have something to show the less adept teachers. Say, this is what we can do with this space, and this is what we're going for. This is beautiful. This is clear. This is what we want you to do too, and we can help you do it.
Absolutely. And to go back to one thing that's hardware driven is doing something with something like a 6K camera, even if you only had one in the budget. The teachers will look a lot better than they do in class. They'll look better than they look in real life. It helps. Like good lighting, good lighting with a good camera, well shot. People get addicted to that, and and so you want to, it may seem like you want to be utilitarian about it. We'll just use something that's easy and less expensive, but making people look like movie stars helps, a fair bit, and wanting them to and everyone can look like a movie star. It doesn't matter whether they're, their bone structure or their whatever. I look much better on video than I look in real life. So proper lighting and a good camera go a long way. And I think that you want to take those things into account and remember that people are making a lot of decisions. Your students are watching YouTube with people with really, large aperture cameras and, well cut. As teachers, you're competing with that. And the fundamental problem we get into when we do things that are fast and easy and not those things is that students look at the content as lesser than. They look at it as lesser than. It's just school content, as opposed to what they're used to watching YouTubers who, many of them, at least to get started, don't have any money. They're just figuring it out, and so there's a lot of things we can learn from YouTubers and TikTokers and everything else about how to make that work. They don't have to fill 50 minutes. I think that the lecture that they did before, how do you cut it down? How do you make it more succinct? How do you not, I only use slides as a last resort. I want to use video. I want to use examples, diagrams, those types of things. But a slide deck with lots of text is not really a good idea for anyone to use anywhere in the world for any reason, except for educators and government people, because they're used to it. They're used to the abuse. So, but for almost everybody else, we should really think about, how do we make it interesting and again, your students can do all of it. I could do it. I was doing, at the time, broadcast level work at 16 years old, with a video camera. Like there's no reason that you won't find 10 students that will do this all the time. It's just a matter of engaging them. And what engages them is you being ahead of them and guiding them and making it better. And by the way, if you're a school doing this and you want Jason, if you want more time, and it's why I built everything that I do. So if you want more time, just contact me on Discord, and I'm happy to help. Even if it's coming in and doing stuff, it's what I'm up to. Next question
comes from Sky here in the panel in Seattle. What does graduation look like in your world, everybody?
Graduation. We're working on one. It went through a bunch of different. We've bid on a bunch of them, and we're working on one of them. And it's mostly kids outside in tents with little places they can take a picture with their family, and they're streaming it to a variety of different outlets so that their family can look at it. It's not, I think the budget wasn't there to make it as aggressive as possible. We saw we did bid on some stuff that was pretty interesting, where students could, the most complicated one we bid on that didn't go through for a variety of reasons was giving students a place to invite their friends and family. They'd go to a website and they'd register for all the kids they want to see graduate. So I want to see these 6 kids in my high school graduate. And there was these kind of 20 by 20 foot, 10 by 10 foot things where they're going to get their diploma from somebody. And there's like 6 of them at a time. So they're just, cars are coming in and doing it separated. Then the idea is that it was going to be all in Zoom, Zoom OSC. And the idea is that a student would walk up to the tent that they're going to go into to get their diploma. They scan a QR code. It immediately pulls, if you're in the meeting, it pulls you into the right room that will let you watch that student. And at hierarchy, if 2 students go in at the same time, what the hierarchy that you had, it would decide which room that you're going to go to. But then you get to watch it and you show up on a screen for them. So only the people that were interested in seeing them can all wave, and the student can wave back to them and then immediately go to the next one. And it wasn't that complicated. It was just hard, I think, for them to get there. I think it was hard to get your head around for a school to figure out that would work. But that was probably the most complicated one. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, my production partner and I did 4 graduations for our district last year. And they were all virtual, but we did a combination of in-person and virtual, where we pre-recorded individual students walking across the stage. at each particular school site, and then we're able to comp that all together for a final product that we were able to turn out. This year, though, what we're really looking at doing is ensuring that we're using our COVID funding and all of our money to buy stuff that we can continue to use year over year. And what I mean by that is our district just purchased 4 Aruba 6300M switches, so we can start having a 10 gig fiber backbone, so we can start doing these big productions where we can use multiple cameras at multiple sites. My production partner and I also talked about how graduation is not just a student walking across a stage. We learned this a lot last year after having discussions with families. It is actually, the entire process walking through it is like a ride at Disneyland. When you're in the line, there should be picture spots where people can jump off and go take pictures with friends and then hop back in the line to kind of get in the stadium. When they're in the stadium for graduation, when they're sitting around, there should be pre-roll happening to get people excited not only about the school and the institution, but also by the community into things that are coming up and that are happening. When we actually do graduation, it's not just people getting up and talking, giving their spiel like it's a state of education address, but it really is pointing out the things that the institution is good at doing. And then when students walk across the stage, making sure that each student has a specific amount of time where that student is honored in some way, shape, or form. So we try and give at least 6 seconds to each student as they're walking across stage, so parents can actually see them walk from one side of the stage to the other, but also get a full camera, get a full screen close-up moment of what that specific student looks like. So we actually separate out our cameras, one for the east side of our stadium, one for the west side of our stadium, and we're doing IMAG differently for each side because there's different students that are graduating and moving across the stage on different sides. So that's kind of what graduation looks like on our end.
How many are in the stadium?
Normally we can have up to, I think it's 5,000 in the stadium, but this year we're expecting more. Well, we can't expect more than that, but we're having like an overflow area because we're on 68 acres. So what we're doing is we're actually having videos sent to different parts actually of the school site. So we have some people that are parents and I think 2 other family members that are available in the stadium. We're having an overflow area on our baseball field that's going to have a big LED wall that's going to be taking the broadcast and pushing it out there. And we're also going to have another overflow area in our quad area. So we have 3 different sections where people can enjoy graduation across the campus, and it's not just specifically at one site.
They're lucky to have you.
Yeah, we spent time planning this out because we honestly, it's not just something you go sit down and watch. I just know sitting through when I was a family member was graduating, I hated going to graduations because all I did was go in, sit down, go and then leave. Yeah. There has to be something for everyone involved, and you have to think modally and different layered when it comes to graduation.
Right. And by it's welcome, by the way, Jason, to our little group of other people that
thank you for having me.
Like for each of the people who show up here every Saturday morning are generally the ones that are moving and shaking, in their area. So it's good to have you join the movers and shakers. Go ahead, Roscoe. Did you have something?
You jumped to me. Oh, that's right. No, yeah, mine's very personal because what happens for a month is students show up with a camera person, a reflector, sometimes 2 camera people, and they walk around campus and they take pictures. And so it's a great opportunity to say congratulations. That is what graduation is. It is always that way, but this year it just means a lot more to the students because the ceremony is, I don't want to go there. It's really bad.
Go ahead, John.
Our campus did some clever things. They produced a little mini graduation video that everyone got. They came up with a whole page of what you could do to celebrate the commencement. They're going to do a drive-by. They have it scheduled, by class, and we're on the former Fort Ord, so there's a very big parking lot where they used to park tanks. So they're trying to make it as a celebratory, the word, celebration as much as possible. But they're also saying that they're going to have an in-person event that anyone could come to. So in a sense, next year when they hope it's going to be a normal graduation, people who didn't get to march can come back and march even with the different classes. So it'll be interesting. We'll have a multi-year graduation probably in 2023.
That's great. Next question.
And the other one we have in today, Craig Kadoki of Toronto, Canada, says, how are teachers dealing with the variety of screen sizes that students are participating from? I've had to rework some of my content based on attendees using small iPhones, where others in the class are using 24-inch plus monitors or even large TVs.
Watch a lot of Apple keynotes. And then the main thing that we do is I generate all content that I build at 4K at UHD. So 3840 by 2160. I do everything at 16 by 9. I don't mess around with anything else. But I make sure that if I scaled it down to 640 by 360, it would read comfortably. And so that's, and that means that it looks big, if you're doing it in 4K. But it reads comfortably. It doesn't have to read perfectly. I mean, it reads comfortably. Like it may not look as good. That will be for people who make typical academic slides. That will be confronting for you, to do that, because at 640 by 360, you can't put a lot of text on there, but I don't use text. Like I talk over it. I don't use my slides as notes. So I have a note section inside of Keynote to do that. My notes are in my notes. And my images are my images. I keep everything highly visual, so if I'm showing you something and I have something changing all the time. So I have things animating in and out. If I want to say 4 points, I'll have those 4 points appear when I want to say them, not all at one time. So if you start rethinking how you build your presentations, but again, the gold standard is Apple. Apple does it better than anyone else, and they have for the last decade. And so if you want to see how to build a slide deck, that will work on a small screen, just watch a lot of Apple events and you'll see the maximum amount of text that you should put on a slide ever is where Apple goes. They push it every once in a while, but it is the max. Like don't go further than that. Go ahead, Craig, and then John.
Yeah, it's not so much text for me. I'm very much in the same camp with you as to use as little text as possible. Mm-hmm. But some of the stuff that I'm teaching, first of all, some of the stuff I'm teaching is government mandated safety courses where I'm being given the content by somebody else. I don't have control of the stack, and it's horrible. It really is. It really is hard to
I've
teach
been through
because it's exactly the wrong thing to do. Yeah. But in the stuff that I generate, I've got a lot of diagrams and I've got a lot of screen captures from software of things that I'm trying to explain and trying to get them to work with me while they're working on something. And I just find at some point when somebody's looking at a little screen this big, it's really hard to get the content legible for them or enough that they actually get drawn into it. Yeah. And that's where I'm
with design that you don't have control over. I don't have a strong answer for it because you really have to design for the small screen. Yeah. And make it something that's easy to understand, how to make that work to lock.
Is it an option for anybody here? Has anybody taken the option of saying you have to have a minimum hardware to be able to participate? You have to have at least something the size of an iPad Pro or a small netbook even?
Well, that's what I was going to ask. If there's any kind of government mandate for you specifically that says you cannot ask for minimums. And I know sometimes the institution will have that kind of rule. Sometimes there will be other reasons for that rule, depending on socioeconomic considerations.
Yeah, and you can also say recommended sizes. It may not be required sizes, but something at the very beginning, a slide that is a kind of we recommend a minimum of 8-inch by whatever and a minimum of 1280 by 720, that kind of thing. We recommend this resolution and this screen size to see that you can decide what that is. And then when people don't have that, you can say, well, we recommend it to be larger. The problem, if you can design it, you can easily design it for small screens. It can be designed.
The onus is on us as teachers to not put certain prejudices in place with that kind of equipment issue, or not wanting to turn cameras on because of whatever's happening in the background, that kind of thing. We have to be able to be egalitarian about our education anyway, and so it's hard. And so like when we say, when we urge people to turn their cameras on, we just have to be careful about how we
What
do
was
it. So I think it's a big question.
But Craig, are your students adults?
Yes, they are.
So it's slightly different than students in the sense that we do need to, in their what profession?
It crosses a bunch of things. A lot of it is it's live entertainment, stagecraft, construction. Even the government mandated stuff is like working at heights kind of material, safety training.
Right.
And
I think you can push a little
us,
harder, in that area than you could with general students.
Yeah, and because it is that type of situation, we can push for things like they have to have their cameras on because they're getting a certificate that says they're trained that meets a government standard of safety. So we have to be able to say, we know that you participated fully in it. We know that you were there and that you interacted, not just that you had your Zoom on and you were sitting, in the other room or something.
Right. Go ahead, John.
It's very hard to mandate a specific piece of hardware. In our teacher preparation program that we did statewide, when we wanted to mandate a certain resolution for all of our students, we had to provide the iPad with it. So that's when we became a one-to-one teacher preparation program. The freedom that you get when you know the display device is really incredible. So when you can do it, it's great, but it's hard to mandate it. But Alex, a question for you, because when I'm advising people, they come up with the question, well, how many words per slide? So what do you tell people?
20.
Okay.
20 words max. I mean, that's, if someone asks me, it's 20. So, and obviously every time that you say something like that, there's some exceptions and stuff like that. But if someone asks me just flat out, like, how many words do you put on a slide? It's 20. And that's a lot. I mean, if I get over 10, I usually am like, do I really? Can I break this up into another slide? Can I, and again, when you start thinking about your slides, like the other person's really good at slides, and I don't know if he's done very many public events where he's shown the slides, is Jack Conte from Patreon. Mm-hmm. He is a wizard. Like, he raised, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars on his ability to do slides. Like, remember, slide decks is the superpower. Like, just so you know, like, that is the superpower of getting everything you want, is being able to do a good slide deck. So in the corporate world and investment world and everything else. And you can, like, knowing how to do paper, reading and writing is cute, but slide decks are a big deal. They move Google and Facebook and Apple and all these other companies down the path. But Jack will do an hour presentation and the slide will change every 3 seconds. I kid you not. Like, he's like, boom, 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 boom. And it's just like, and he works on them forever, to do something. And it's a work of art. Like, it's just, and it's high performance, and everything else. But when you start to think about every time you have a new idea that you want to do, really thinking hard about, where do I put an image here? And what's a great diagram? And you won't get it right all the time. What I get really good at is if I do it over and over again, I keep on refining slides. And a lot of times my slides will end up as one section at first, and then I break them up into 5 slides. Like it's going to be this and then this and then this. And then I keep on breaking them up because I have one more thing I want to show you. But I want those things to happen while I'm talking. Just there's a visual, the slides are a visual support for what you're saying. You're not reading the slides ever. You are talking and there's visual representations that make it easier to understand what you were saying. And when you tie those things together, you end up with a very, very compelling deck that moves things forward a lot. Go ahead, Dan, and then Bill.
Didn't know you were going to go to me. I was just asking.
Or did I?
Yeah. I was assuming these were all over Zoom, and I wish there was a little more control for the host on what the view is for the participants, but at least you could pinch and zoom on a phone. I mean, it takes screenshots, and so there's that, because I mean, I can't read some of those cells sometimes.
Yeah, and I design mine. I look at all of mine on my phone. Like, I definitely look at them on the phone to make sure that I can see it comfortably, and I have bad eyesight. So I'm a good person to check my own work. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, so for me, the conundrum is that as screens have gotten smaller, particularly with smartphones, the resolution of them have gone up. But then you're in the middle of this idea of the resolution may be there, but not a lot of your audience, not all of your audience, and certainly the older folks can see things that are small, even if the resolution is there. So I never think about resolution. I always think about the number of words, to Alex's point. And I actually have a stricter rule than his. When I was designing billboards in the advertising world, we had 7 words to work with. So I start, and if I can't do it in 7, I get nervous. If I get up to 10, I feel like I'm pushing the outer limits, and 20 would frighten me to
Right.
death. I would think there's got to be something that I can simplify or explain in another way, not through text, to get this content out to people. It's just, this is a different world, and this is how people are going to be consuming these things. And to think about those people who do not have the acute vision of a 14-year-old is critical in this day and age if you want your content to last and go across individuals.
Good, Sky.
I'm just curious about comprehension. If you're wanting your audience to actually perceive what you're trying to tell them versus just showing off, I guess the
I'm
question
not talking
is,
about showing off, though. I mean,
oh, no, don't misunderstand me. But I'm specifically thinking about, a producer told me a lower third, he would do a technique that he would read it 3 times. And that was his mechanical technique of how much verbiage that he would put up in front of an audience to hopefully get them to perceive what he was trying to connect with them. So I guess that was where I was going. Not showing off, don't misunderstand me, but the audience perception. Is 3 times, reading it 3 times, is that a technique?
The main thing is that when you sync up the visual with the audio, your comprehension goes up a lot. You know, it's the lower third is not sunk with the with you know, this it's correlated, but it's not sunk with that. And so the goal is for people, you know, in a presentation, when you're talking through those things, the goal really needs to be understanding. That doesn't mean it's different than comprehension, you know, and I think that we have to very carefully separate understanding from comprehension. Because comprehension is saving up a bunch of things that you won't need in your head. Where understanding is understanding, when you understand a concept, then everything else that you see contextually fits into that understanding. So when you have an overall understanding of how video works, or how, how HLS works, or how whatever those things are that we talk about, then when you get other details, those now have a hook to hook onto them. So you can get into things that are more complicated, and you keep on doing that. And the best way to create hooks is to have people fail. So when they fail, it rips a little thing opened, and that little thing open now is waiting for something to be put in, because and when you work out, you rip your muscles, and then nutrients fill in those muscles and you get stronger. When you force people to fail, and that's why my education process is that generally failing forward. You want to fail forward. You just want to keep on failing as often, and you want people to, and we got into this discussion about 10,000 hours or 10,000 mistakes. And it's really important that 10,000 mistakes is what you're looking for, is because you want to keep failing. And then when you fail, you allow those nutrients to fill in those gaps, and you get smarter and smarter and smarter. Chris, and then Jason, and then John.
I wanted to introduce the idea that when we're talking about slides and presentations, what is the point? What are they for? And I think a lot of us educators are still hooked on the idea that a presentation supported with slides and illustrations is teaching, is about understanding something to an audience that's dedicated and really eager to understand that. But I don't think that's true anymore. The reason that millions of people watch billions of hours of YouTube is because it's a demonstration of doing something supplemented by some talk explaining what I'm trying to do, or what I'm doing, or what mistake I just made, and how I retrieve that bolt that just dropped down inside my engine. So if we rethink the purpose of these quote unquote presentations, that it's not really teaching, it's showing how to do something, how somebody who's done it more than once would approach it and do it. And then the point is that you too can try to do it on your car or whatever the context is. It's all about doing something and showing what's possible. And then you may not need a lot of text on slides to demonstrate that.
Right.
You need good video of what you're trying to do.
Yeah. John.
Yeah, following on with Chris and your model, I put in Discord a link to 2000, I think it was 2005 speech called Identity 2.0. And it's using that model of a single word or a single graphic. It's sort of the classic of that presentation. And what's interesting is his talk on Identity 2.0, which was done in 2005, is probably more relevant now than it was then.
Yeah. Jason?
2 quick points. First, Erin in the chat nailed it right away, where she said she has her elementary students make $2 slides. They get 10 cents for a word. And so 20 words is what you get on the slide. Perfect, fantastic. Gives students incentive on how to build slides and put stuff together. It's great. Second point, when Alex was talking about failing, one of the things that I always tell my students is you're allowed to fail as long as after you fail, you're allowed to go back and reattempt that particular project again. So in my class, because I teach video production and video content, they can make as many videos as they want throughout the entire semester. And I will only take the X amount to like the highest ones for them to be able to do. And what I found out is that once the students understand they have a safe place to fail, they're willing to be more creative and think outside the box because they're no longer worried just about passing a test. They're worried about doing it right. And so that was something I thought that you mentioned, Alex, I thought was really, really, really important. When you say students need to learn to fail, I really think that is a key component of learning, because how do we learn if we can't fail and fail safely?
Yeah, no, absolutely. By the way, a good example of a good presentation, and many of you have already seen this if you're an educator, but if you're watching, is Sir Ken Robinson's Education Paradigms. It's probably one of the best. I mean, it'll definitely give you a sense of how I feel about education, but it is, look at how, an RSA did an animation of it. So you watch the one, not his presentation, his TED Talk is good. I mean, it's good core content, but RSA did an animation where they're drawing things as he's, again, it's coming out as he's talking, and you'll see how the visual supports the presentation and allows you to tie that back in. And there's actually a good program we're using in Rwanda. I know that, and I can't think of the name of it right now. There's a piece of software that will kind of do that for you, where it'll just draw out things as you're talking, and people seem to like it a lot. For me, I'd rather just do the animations. Again, when I think about Keynote, I'm not thinking about a presentation tool. I'm thinking about an inexpensive animation tool. Like that's what I'm using it for, animation and video tool. It's the cheapest and easiest way to do animation and video. And so that's how I view slide decks, or not slide decks, but Keynote decks. In other things, they are slide decks because they don't have the tools to do that. Go ahead, Sky.
I'm just really buzzing on your definitions between comprehension versus understanding, because the learning is what I'm here for every Saturday, because not just the education or the teaching, it's the like you said, the
if you
understanding, that's huge.
If you look at the power of what
and I
we're
think
doing,
that app is called Doodle, that
Doodle,
one you
yeah.
were talking about, I think.
Yeah, maybe someone. I mean, I don't know if Ryan is on here right now. Ryan sometimes is watching here from Rwanda. So anyway, if you look at what we've done in office hours on a day-to-day basis, what we've done is created a lot of understanding. We don't feel like we need to remember everything all the time because we have people to ask. And but we also, a lot of us understand our pipelines better, understand how all this fits together, how it all works, and we keep what we're ready to Office Hours has created a platform in which we keep what is relevant to us at the moment, knowing that when the other things become relevant, we have a place to go fill that in as fast as possible. So you come with the questions, and I'm a strong believer that you are not ready for the answer until you have the question, until you have the need. That's when you're ready for it. And I've said before, it's most of what we have in school is faux gras education. We're just going to shove it down your throat, whether you're ready for it or not. And, it's not a great experience. So, and that's why people get tired. When people are droopy eyed, I don't view that as their fault. I view that as my fault. You know, like it needs to be, you know, it's my job to hold their interest. Next question.
Darnell, Orange County, California says, can we see a behind the scenes photo of Alex's set? It's really beautifully lit.
Why? Thank you. So I can show you a little bit. I apologize. My set is always a mess. So there's always like things that I'm constantly pulling apart and putting together, but let me see if I can find, let's see, it's camera.
Helped in no small way by polarized filters and a LUT from Charles.
Yeah. So I've got, there's my 6K camera there with a polarized filter. This center one has a polarized, it's a little backwards. Oh, I got to look over here. This will be easier. So that center one here has a polarized filter. I don't have it on all of them yet, but I'm thinking about it. Anyway, so those are Nanlite 100 100Bs that I have there, and I have another one right there over my head.
Is that like an ND filter? Is that what you're?
No, it's a polarizing filter. So when I have when I match the polarizing filter on the linear polarizing filter with my camera, it gets rid of the reflection. So anyway, and then down here I have that is the another Nanlite. It's way more than I need, but it's really convenient to have, and that's for the background there. So that's basically how I have it lit right now. And then again, and we posted the cube, I think, in Discord. So the cube that Charles made for me. So there's a specific LUT for my camera that's kind of a zoom LUT. So that I think is available on Discord. I think we put it, I don't remember where we put it, and we can post it again if we need to. But that makes it easier as well. And then of course that goes.
Do you have a dedicated breaker for that room?
I do. I don't have a breaker. I don't have a dedicated breaker, but I do have a dedicated. They're on different circuits. The lights are on a circuit that I turn on and off as I walk in, so that all the lights, I can turn off all the lights real quickly. And then the stuff that needs to be consistent is on a different circuit that lets me. But what's remarkable is that I think that my whole room is on 2 circuits. It's not. There's a lot of lights, but the LED lights the draw is so low that there just really hasn't been. I mean, it doesn't. I've never had it. Well, I have. There was one point where I put enough things in here that it caused it to pop, and then I had to refigure things out. It had to do with when I had the bigger kit. So when I used to have a Constellation running this one instead of the Extreme, I had a lot more kit, and I had to put that on a separate piece. Go ahead, Sky.
Yesterday, we observed the power of the battery backup because 10 minutes before the end of the show,
Mickey.
Apparently it got so hot in Manila that everybody was turning on their air conditioners and it took out the power grid. And Mickey's all of a sudden still live and with us because his system was on, but he had no lights. He had no air conditioning.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I've been meaning to ask this in Makana. I didn't put it in the notes. Sorry. But where does Charles's LUT live for you? Is it in the camera?
It's in the camera. Yeah. So what you do is you take that cube file, you put it on a memory card that is that either the hard drive that you plug into the camera or into a compact flash, not compact flash, CFast card, and you put it in, and then it will see it. I mean, you can say, now I want to load LUTs in the camera, and so you go load a LUT, and then you load that LUT in, and then you choose that LUT, and then it's now, instead of doing film to video or film to extended video, it's film to that LUT, and then it's going to do all the color management there. It's good. We're working on it. Another reason to have a 6K. Go ahead, Craig.
Just can that be loaded through the ATEM as well if you're running off an ATEM switcher?
No, you have to load to load the LUT into the camera. Yeah, you can if you have an FSHDR, you can load it into the FSHDR for a given input. So you can apply LUTs to whole feeds, but currently the switcher doesn't support that. Next question.
Moving on, Sky Gleason's back with another one, and he says, Aaron and others, what is your school district's current plan for fall of 2021? In-person, hybrid, or both, or something else, or who knows?
Go ahead, Aaron.
So my district is already full back in person, except for the students that have opted to stay remote. Next year, it will be back in person from what I understand as of now, but we are starting a remote academy and students are signing up as we speak. So, we're looking forward to that.
How's the uptick on the remote academy?
Well, we sent out a survey, I believe, on Wednesday, and I believe we've received 60 students already. So hopefully,
how many is in your district? How many got that email?
Oh goodness, that's a great question. I'd have to look up the numbers. I don't want to give you the wrong information, but
okay, very cool. Very cool. Next question. Oh, sorry. I think I missed it. Go ahead, Jason.
We have a district, I think, of 22,000 students, and currently we are planning on doing in-person, hybrid, and remote. So students will have the ability to not only choose, but be able to pick which option they want at each semester, not even for the full year. So if whatever works for families is really what our district is trying to do.
I just think if you're a family, you could just travel and be remote as long as you have a good internet connection.
I have students doing that right now. They actually record our daily announcements from their hotel room, and they'll upload to OneDrive, send it to the editor, and be able to run with that from there.
Yeah, Aaron.
So it's 6,000. We have 6,000 students in my district. And I've had students do the same thing. While they weren't traveling for enjoyment, it was for family concerns. I had a student joining me from across the country and one from across the pond. So,
yeah,
I mean, remote learning.
I mean, I
Learn
think that
anywhere.
the devolution of the idea of a school district is coming soon because it's just, you don't have to be anywhere. Next question.
Comes from Jason Sipe again from Murrieta, California, here on the panel. And teachers, what have you done this year that has definitely increased your student engagement from previous years?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Had students do the same
Left
thing
Zoom
while they
open.
weren't
I've used Zoom as a
traveling
comm channel,
for
which I never
enjoyment.
really
It was
thought
for
about
family
before. That
concerns.
when I'm in
I
the
had a
building
student joining
and
me
you are
from
separated
across the
oftentimes,
country and one
the
from
students can
I get
actually get a
double
hold
across
of
the
feed
you.
pond.
of audio.
So
Yeah,
Is it
I
just
do.
me?
remote learning.
I mean, I
Learn
think that
anywhere.
I do.
the devolution of the idea.
Do I have a
of
double
school
feed of audio
district
right
is
now?
coming
No, it
soon,
was
you know,
Aaron
because
from
it's
about
just,
a minute ago.
you don't have to
Oh,
be
okay.
anywhere.
Nothing that she's
Question?
doing. It's just being
Comes from
double
Jason
fed
Sipe
in.
again
from Murrieta,
Okay.
California. Yeah, there's my announcement coming back at me a
Yeah.
minute and a half.
It sounds like
delayed.
somebody's got the YouTube feed coming back in.
Yeah, that could be.
That could be me. Sorry
Okay,
about
go
that.
ahead. Yep.
Okay.
No.
Sorry, I just couldn't hear anything.
Yeah, we just heard. I was like, I thought I was closing windows. Like, what happened? You always assume it's yourself. Like, oh my god. All right, next question.
Okay, so I didn't hear Roscoe's to that.
Roscoe, did you want
to do that so we can hear you?
No.
Oh, he's patching. So
to? Okay, great. Aaron, did I think we got lost there? Did you have any engagement secrets?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I know that my students really love the more videos that we've been doing.
Mhm.
And when I've been popping into breakout spaces and do like 60-second really quick videos that I send them, like they'll say, oh, we don't really get how to do number 17. So I'll hop off, do a quick video, send it to them, and continue on in the other breakout spaces just so that I can still help them, but I'm not being taken away from other groups of students. But also the gaming concept, I know Emily had shared with me the concept of Gimkit, and my students love playing Bluekit games, and now they're making them. So while I know it's still like a multiple choice, like answering questions kind of thing, having them create them has been a really great experience for me because now they're thinking they're in the teacher's shoes. So now that's like this, ooh, I get to be the teacher for the moment concept, and they really seem engaged by that.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that gets back into being able to find some way for teachers to record screen captures of a whiteboard, just being able to do this, and so then you can be responsive all the time. I think that if teachers had a whiteboard with, and the ability to do it in 1 hour a day to do that, they could just sit there and just cut through questions and just go, this is how this works, and for the students that need that, they don't have to, it can be really easy to make that work. There you Exactly. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, sorry about that. Zoom is a comm system is my answer, because when I was in the building, students could get a hold of me. I would just leave a Zoom open. I was actually Zooming in a play last night, but they could get a hold of me through that Zoom. It was just great to have it as a comm. That's the only increase.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
One thought about having multiple options like remote as well as face-to-face as well as the mix is, I think it's really important that students make a personal connection with the teacher and with their fellow students. Then I can watch from Boston or I can watch from Vancouver, and that's the reason I come back to office hours every week, is because I see these wonderful familiar faces and hear these familiar voices. I have a connection with the people. But if I were just tuning in to a random classroom somewhere, it wouldn't work for me. I wouldn't be part of the community. I wouldn't know the ebb and flow and connection and have memories of what he or she said last week and or anticipation of what Sky is going to say next.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the ways to think about next year is how do you make those links, connections, community, whatever you want to call it, so that it's possible that you can do extended or distant reconnections, and they'll mean more, they'll work better.
John, and then Talak.
Yeah, I'd like to see what the Roscoe's campus is doing, but I never thought I'd live to see the day that we defined 6 types of courses on the CSUMB campus, ranging from requires in-person attendance to no in-person attendance, but there's 6 versions: always in person, always synchronous via Zoom, always synchronous, students work independent, hybrid course on campus, hybrid synchronous, and hybrid concurrent. And those are the 6 styles of courses that are appearing in our catalog for the next term.
Talak.
Chris's comment tied something together for me from what you were talking about before in terms of the office hours community and failing, the power of failing. And I think that the community that we have here also provides us with respected people to disagree with us. You know what I mean? If we have a thought about something, we can put it forward and then have them come back at us with something and then push our brains further. And I would love to pull that into, if I get the chance to teach another class, I would love to pull that in to my classroom, because I think that is when real learning happens. You know, when I say I have a real strong conviction about something, and then there's enough safety for each of those students to come back and say, I don't agree with that, and then there to be a real discourse in that way. Yeah, I mean, I really, really, really want to figure that out for my classroom.
Well, I think that's part of what makes, part of what makes office hours work, to your point, is that you don't know what's going to happen next. You know, like it's not, there's no like format to it, in the sense that there is a, you know, we're going to talk about it, and, you know, I think we all correct each other. I mean, I get corrected by folks here, and everybody else gets, you know, there's a, but it is a, it's definitely conscious that you have to create that space for people to be able to do that and feel safe. And I think some teachers, the teachers that we remember from school, are good at that. The teachers that we hated in school were not good at that, you know, and, you know, I think that's the, you know, that I think that's the difference between oftentimes a good teacher and a not a good teacher. I had a lot of very polarized experiences with teachers because of that, because I was both really fun and really terrifying as a student. So, you know, for teachers. John.
I don't think I'll ever get you to agree that a light board is a good idea for a marker.
I think being able to draw in front of my video is amazing. I think it is the future. I just don't want to be constrained to only one angle. All right, next question.
Jason Sipe is back from Murrieta, California with teachers. What does the chat area mean to you? Is it a place to ask questions? Is it a place for students to conversate? Synchronous, asynchronous? How do you use chat?
So my experience with chat was that there was a asynchronous conversation happening, or a synchronous, I guess, conversation happening the entire time, sometimes about me, you know, a hair going off awry or whatever it may be, and it would derail me sometimes, but I think in a kind of in a great way. You know, I would laugh about something that I said because I didn't realize I had said it in that way, and sort of sent a ripple of conversation back and forth. And I think I was thinking about this. I think that there should also be the ability for chat to happen that I cannot see, so that they can really have conversations that they don't feel comfortable for me seeing, as well as chat that I can see.
Go ahead, Aaron.
So my students use the chat for everything from saying good morning to putting emojis to asking questions to responding to people to telling jokes to being funny. So for the most part, I just let it happen unless it's something super specific that I'm teaching, like for my 5 to 10 minutes of direct instruction, I turn it off, but I turn on the Q&A section on Google Meet, and that way they can still ask questions, but it's not, let's put in all the emojis, but the students are having conversations throughout the day, and I really think that's beneficial so they can talk to each other, talk to me, and I can kind of keep that running record.
Go ahead, Jason.
For me, I actually bypassed Zoom completely this year and went straight to Twitch. My TAs were moderators where they could basically put people in timeout if they need to be put in timeout. And I left the chat at the bottom lower third of the screen, so that way students knew that whatever they were saying would come up on screen. So if they said something bad, it would go up there, but if my moderators were watching, they'd be able to time out the person and it would automatically delete. That's how I used the chat mostly for this year. And as far as I felt and I was concerned, the chat was mostly the students in their space to have a conversation without me having to interact with them, but I had the ability to jump in and address the conversation that they were having. I noticed that for me, if I ever asked any questions, I could ask them out loud, but for them asking questions in the chat, it would just get buried underneath stuff. So I really felt like Q&A was a separate box. And that chat was a separate place for them to kind of have their own space.
And that's how we manage it inside of Makana, is that it's the secret to the operation, is that chat and questions separate. As soon as you cut those in half, now when people want to address things to us, they ask them in questions. When they want to talk amongst themselves and put ancillary links and do all the other things. I have chat open a lot in Makana, but not all the time because it's just too hard for me to focus on the conversation and on that at the same time. But obviously we have people looking at it. But I think that's why we've separated that. And then also there's a lot of tools. Now I have, like in Makana, I have the ability, if someone asked a question in chat or said something we want to refer to, I can literally just pull it right out of chat and drive it straight through our Q&A system and be able to push it out into lower thirds and everything else if I wanted to. So that's all built into it. We just don't do it very often in this format. Like we use a very simple version of it for office hours, and then we have other customized versions for other things. I will let educators know that we're going to be pretty aggressive. We're slowly getting to the surface. We will have Makana ready for some schools for beta for September. So it's going to be, so if you're interested in that, you got to let me know and we'll start talking about it. We're now interested in having school systems use it and have it fail for them. So there'll be things, but we need to start talking about requirements. We need to get into, all the requirements of privacy and other things that we're going to be dealing with as we kind of move down that path. So we want to start getting into those discussions. It might be a little bit but our goal is to be able to start rolling it out only to the folks that are in office hours into their schools if they're interested in the fall, because they'll have to know that they're building it on a test platform. It's a beta, but I think it could be pretty useful. Go ahead, Erin.
Oh, I was just going to say a new thing that's coming up at my recess groups when they're talking with each other is they're all sharing their Discord handles, and they're
Right.
like, "Oh, we're going to have a little chat on the side," and I can't monitor that obviously, but it's just interesting that my 8, 9, and 10-year-olds are hopping on Discord now.
We're working on a program, and we just told some students that we're going to work on it, and we're going to build a Discord server. Do you guys know? And I looked at it, I was like, "Do you guys know what a Discord server is?" And they're like, "Yeah, we know exactly what a Discord server is." Anyway, Jason.
Yeah, just to add on a little bit more what Erin is saying, I've used Slack since 2016 for my classes. So all of my previous students are in there and they can all get in touch with one another, and that's how they actually end up finding jobs. But yeah, the unofficial place is kids making their own Discord servers and passing around handles with each other.
Yeah. And they're all doing the thing is that those conversations that you can't see, they're all doing that already. The next question.
Talak here in the panel says, for Jason, did the administration bristle at all about students coming in while traveling?
I don't necessarily know what you mean by bristle. I would assume you're talking about for our daily announcements where I'd have students calling in from hotel rooms or even on the road. The answer was no, because the students were there. And not only that, their microphones and their lighting and their sound had to actually work for the announcements. It wasn't just whatever they had. We actually, on our end, we used some COVID money actually specifically to not buy Chromebooks, but to buy Windows laptops, so that way students actually could run the correct have the correct technical specs to run whatever it is they need to run, specifically for video production classes. I know we did a couple of our standout senior videos. We actually did one even yesterday where some kids were calling in from the beach. And things are just honest. They were enjoying it as much as the teachers were, because the conversation was not about, are you getting the content, or sorry, not about the technology, but rather, are you understanding the content? And as Alex has said before, once you get technology out of the way and let teachers do their thing and let students be able to conversate back and forth with teachers, it's amazing what can happen in the educational space.
Good to lock.
Just to clarify a little bit, thank you so much. Great answer. I wanted to, it's amazing to me that it sound like you have an ecosystem there, that people are on board and they're going with you on it. And I feel like sometimes that's not going to be the case. And so congratulations.
The only reason why, thank you, by the way, the only reason why we do is because my production partner and I did graduation the way we did last year. So when everyone was away and we couldn't have students in our stadium or in our overflow area where we're used to having 10,000 people on our campus, we had to find some way to make it work in a virtual space. And because we made it work in a virtual space, they gave my production partner and myself more leeway when it comes to making sure that students had the right technology to make things work. And so that only happened because administration was open to listening, and we were willing to put in the hours without getting paid.
And if you really want something to work, I mean, a lot of times it's just a matter of performance. I've gotten away with a lot of things just because the end product succeeded. That was the part that made it work, was, you just figure out some way that you're going to come out the other end, to do that. So next question
comes from Talak again, and he says, what questions do you have for us, Alex? Speaking for all the teachers, I think there.
I've been waiting. All right. So, so patiently, there's so many questions. It was only 2 questions when we started, and I was like, okay, we're going to spend some time on this. Anyway, so I have an opportunity. There's a lot of COVID money rolling around and a lot of experimentation, and there's a lot of schools that I think they're looking at the risks of not evolving are high. Like not for 2021, but 2020, fall of 2022 is going to be, schools need to have a solution that's at least competitive with what's coming, from that the beast that was born in COVID is online education. And when you start seeing students can come in from anywhere, teachers can come in from anywhere, education can come in from anywhere. So how do you, figure out like how you're going to be competitive as a school system? And so I may get the opportunity, it's a public school system, to do a pilot project. It's about 250 to 450 students, so it's just a tiny little, like basically kind of what Aaron was talking about in that kind of small, like we're going to figure it out. And I kind of want to propose where I'm going with it and have you guys pick at it. Or at least give thoughts. Now, student teacher ratio will stay the same, 30 to 1. It's a pretty big school system, so it's not, it's not a comfortable 15 to 1. So let's just imagine 300 students. So if you have 300 students and then 3 grades, so 6, 7, 8 is most likely, or it could be some other ones, but let's just say that those are there. So I'm going to have, and we'll say just for safety, we're going to have about 12 teachers, for that program, across those 300 students. The difference is so there'll be, for each one of those grades, you'll have 4. And the specific 4 thing is there's a couple requirements that we need to make sure we meet. So 310 minutes a day. So there's a math. The math is 310 minutes a day of some kind of thing. That's 400 minutes minus the 90, and so we have that. That's one requirement. Another requirement is they have to test well, So that's the so then we so we have to look at, but instead of looking at how do we take physical, what I'm looking at is not how do we take physical school and put it into virtual. I'm just looking at what are my requirements. So what do I have to do to succeed? So for it to be say, okay, we succeeded at it, we back up and we say the students have to be doing something 310 minutes a day that is productive, within the education process. They have to test well. They have to, that we have to know where they are. We have to be able to interact with them. Now that's it. Like, I don't think there's a lot of other, like, to be honest with you, I don't think there's that many other rules that are that important. But they have to test. And the reason we're going to have four teachers, of course, is because those are the four, Common Core, things. So we have to have specialists in each area to do that. Now, what we're looking at is then adding, if possible, 3 to 4 media specialists. So the goal there is to take the weight off of the teachers to create their own content. So the teachers can design their content. They can come to us with a rough thing, and then we have a group of people to produce that content for them, or at least to produce some of the harder content. So the teachers can put things together, but they have a team that's there to help. Part of this team it could be anywhere in the world, let's just say, like South Africa. So anyway, but the idea, though, is that you have a team that's helping those teachers put those together. Now, you have to have other things like English as a second language is another, so we'll have to have, some support for that. We're not sure about the other extenuating circumstances for the first year, to manage those things. Now, here's where things start to get interesting. So one of the things that, because of office hours and because of the way that I look at a lot of those things, what I'm not looking at doing is having teachers typically you'd have them doing a lecture 3 times in a row, like 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. What I'm looking at is the entire class will meet on each subject once a week for somewhere between 1 and 2 hours for Q&A. That's the one time that they're all together. We're not repeating anything. So they are having a general Q&A session with the teacher about that subject matter once a week for it. Now, what that does is it gives the teacher more time back. They're not sitting there having to, do those lectures over and over again. So you're thinking, instead of lots of little classrooms, we're thinking in big boxes. Now, the other things that provides the teacher with is, we have a calculation that, or I have a calculation that the teacher could actually have a one-on-one meeting with every student for 15 minutes every week. Like literally check in with every student. With just being able to, over Zoom, being able to just sit there and just go through, how are you doing? What's going on? With still some more time to spend a little time with extra time with students that are having a little bit more trouble. So you have, you can set up special pieces for them to do. Now, that's one piece of that, is just these little check-ins that teachers can do, inside of that process. By the way, the media specialists will manage their Zoom for them. So the teachers don't have to do anything other than show up. There's, so the media specialist, because there's not that many classes going on at one time, between the other things, 1 or 2 of them. And then the goal will be to slowly engage the students into running parts of that. So asking the questions and managing the different pieces will engage students to do more, more in that process, to be part of that production program. Now, the other thing that we're looking at doing is basically, the students then will also be broken up into, a lot of their time will be in breakout sessions. So the each grade is atomized, most likely into groups of 5 or 6, so that they can work on their challenges, because they'll be given a lot of challenges. I mean, that's a lot of the whole system will be based on challenges. So we're going to create some videos. We're going to show you videos. Go do this thing. Like, it's always going to be, everything's going to end with go do this, and everything is based on based on something that's very important, which is specific measurable results. It is specific. This is what we want you to do. It is measurable. It is not go study something. You will produce a result, every week. And so that makes it measurable, where we know whether students are keeping up or not, because they are producing the SMRs, that are there. Or they're not, and then we pay a lot more attention to them, so to see what's going on, figure out what's wrong, and then that's where you start to fill it in. Now, the students working on those SMRs are in these little pockets. The goal is to take the average score of the entire, however we set up the scoring, we basically, the average score of the whole class, let's say, is 82%. We're going to have Zoom OSC organize all of these breakout rooms to meet that number, or be plus or minus a couple percentage points of that number. So the more advanced students are always being paired with the less advanced students, and to work on those programs automatically, and it's randomizing. So the students don't get to go, oh, I want to be in this group, or I want to be in that group. The machine is constantly moving them to different groups. It's designed to be both randomized and to average out the overall thing, so that the more advanced students can't just ignore the less advanced students, and there's going to be some incentives to move those students forward for everyone. But anyway, the teachers will have audio coming out of every one of these that they can randomly select. So the teacher can literally listen to all the rooms, groups of rooms, single rooms. Students can raise their hand, and teacher can just tap a button and be in the class. So if students are stuck on something, they're working on something. I don't know what that is. Let's raise our hand. Teacher can tap on it and be instantly in that room and talking to them about, like, what's the question, and teacher will have this, they'll have, if everything goes well, teachers would have a Mac and the students would have iPads. So but a lot of it will be driven around doing those presentations. But the idea is that a large portion of the teacher's time is spent interacting directly with the students, having discussions, and working through those problems. And then there is time with them designing what they want, producing a little of it, but letting the heavy lifting being done by the media specialists. The students are spending a lot of time in discussion with each other, in discussion with the teacher, and working, in kind of more of a lab environment, working with each other to get those different things done in those processes. And then the goal is because of that, the other teachers will potentially be able to help each other, in those classes, because the classes won't overlap. For the different teachers, there's different classes that are happening each day, but a lot of it's broken down. So that's kind of but a lot of it's very discussion driven video, kids watching videos, for the core content. And the idea is to make it condensed and interesting and utilize what there is on the web. The teacher doesn't have to do a lecture of stuff that's already on YouTube, like that, here is your viewing things and watch these things, as well as the things you go to internet first, and then to what can we add to that when we think about media. And then this is what the students should be looking at. This is the challenge. These are your resources. And then lots and lots of discussion to basically fill in all the gaps in a personal student by student basis, for that process. Teachers theoretically will not all have to come from the district. So we'll probably fan out. So a handful of them do. But we may, where the resources come from will come from a couple different places. Okay, so that's about as fast as I can describe it. And now if we'll know how fast it's going, but it may be we get to talk about this all summer if you guys are interested, because it's like but it's my in the land of, I had a teacher that used to tell me to find the box. It wasn't thinking outside the box. It was like, I don't think you know where the box is. And so this is definitely like, the box is way over there, and we're just trying to tendril in just enough of in the box to succeed, so it's how do we, I'll say give to Caesar what is Caesar's. And so, the thing is there are requirements that need to be achieved. We achieve those requirements, but the goal is, of course, to make it fun for the teachers, make it fun for the students, make it interesting and engaging, and then have them learn. Obviously, I'm very competitive, so we're going to have a whole lot of fun, and then we're going to crush those scores. We're going to crush the I'm not, I will redefine what it looks like to teach to the test. Because I know that's the measure. If students come out of it and say, this is a really, really fun thing, that's great. And if they crush the scores at the same time, it's on, we get to do a lot more fun. So go ahead, John.
There's two people I think it'd be fun for you to connect with. Helen Chin at Stanford. Mm-hmm. Came up with the idea of portfolio thinking. And the idea is that the students document their own learning. And I could see something like this where based in the system, you empower the students to really document their own learning over time. It helps you keep track of those hours. There's a firm called Digication that has done electronic portfolio processes in higher ed, but they've also done a lot of things with the K-12 schools. Yeah. Excuse me. Anyway, so that would be one thing that I would add to what you described, empowering the students to take responsibility for their learning and documenting their learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Chris.
Of the 72 things I would like to say, I'll just pick one, and that is think about those 4 teachers as a team. It's team teaching plus one tech person or one media person. So that it's really important to get that each of those 5-person teams communicating during the summer or in the run up to
Yep.
opening day, so that, and throughout the year, there, all those different disciplines represented are going to have a voice, not necessarily an equal voice, in supporting the projects and project-based things, as Roscoe points out in the chat, that seems to be at the heart of what the kids are going to be doing.
Well, and the goal, and this is part where I go, I don't know if I can do it the first year, but the goal is to have the teachers integrate their training, because the students are not repeating over and over again. We now have the ability for the math teacher and the English teacher, and to basically build it so in the discussion that you're having in the same week, you may be working on a project that's incorporating 2 or 3 different disciplines into one of them, and the teachers are sitting there talking about how those, how all of those things piece together, so that the student has it's a much more efficient thing for the students. It's not being pulled in 6 different directions to do something. It is maybe one presentation. A lot of it will be media production. I mean, the students, as much as the teachers, I mean, most of their deliverables, and if I'm left to my own devices, most of their deliverables are going to be Keynote files. Like there's going to be lots of understanding history, understanding this. And the goal is for the students to learn from each other as they're showing each other, both in the little ones and as we show probably the best ones, that will be shown off. There'll be like a show and tell, that shows off, certain numbers of them. The idea is that the students are going to learn a lot from each other. And that's the goal, is to get more peer-to-peer learning. Go ahead, Chris, real quick.
One more point is the teachers should also be doing these projects themselves.
Oh, yeah.
So they know what they're asking others to do who may have less experience, and they may be able to see insights about how physics applies to this apparently artsy project and vice versa.
Right, absolutely. Talak?
So you broke my expectations in one way, and that is I have a negative feeling about test results, about teaching to the test. But in the way that you're talking, for the first time ever, I'm thinking, oh, teach to the test, and then people will actually learn something. That's new.
Well, it's not. Yeah, it's teaching to the test of, I need to make sure that students understand it. Like and the thing is,
exactly.
I think that I just don't have to. What I don't want is the only test I care about is the generalized test in which the school is measuring. There will be no other tests. There may be some informal things, so we know where people are at or whatever. But the idea is that most of it is that they're proving it all the time. And again, we're able to talk through it. We're able to see it. And we may do some low level tests, but I don't want students to worry about the tests as much. I just want them to understand the content, so that when they get to the test that they have from the state, that it's obvious what those answers are, because they've been doing all of those things, because we haven't taken up all their time lecturing and testing. Go ahead, Tony. Nope, can't hear you.
I just wanted to know if you were planning to do a pilot program with this entire setup. And the reason why I ask is because you have clearly demonstrated through office hours that if you want to do something, you basically rehearse it.
Yeah.
You practice before you want to implement it. And so I didn't hear that.
If only I could gather 100 people, or in this case, 97, to test systems over the summer.
Where could that be?
Where could I find them?
Where?
People who are thinkers and that will give constructive feedback and provide
technologists.
It. Absolutely. As we get the stuff up, if it happens, second half of the summer, there'll be lots of, we'll basically be doing lots and lots and lots of tests of breaking, the technology, the process, everything among all of us. My goal is that if I'm, there's no competition here. So the idea is that number one is I'll learn from all the educators here that are experimenting with it. And number two, my goal is that they'll steal as much of it as possible. so they'll take, oh, I like this piece, or I don't like that piece. And if we get the tech working with Liminal, where Andy and the crew is building this stuff up, now it's built. like and schools could use it as they need. The goal is not to, the goal is that schools will suddenly have whatever we created or whatever models work, and some of it won't work. Like we just need to be, like it's, you're doing something that no one's ever done before. So you're, it's, so it'll be willing to dance with whatever that looks like. But to your point, Tony, we'll probably be doing it all year. If there'll be opportunities on Saturdays to lab out some new idea that we have with the teachers to do stuff. And like we have an idea of how to do a class, let's do this. And then Roscoe will say, well, that doesn't work. Or I would do it this way, or and different people will jump in and go, it'd be really good if you did this. And so we have a kind of a unique place to brainstorm among ourselves and then put it in the field and see, if it works, and in that process. Go ahead, Sky.
Well, Talalik and I have had conversations this week, and I don't know if you can remember the 7 words that we finally came up with yesterday of understanding that what we're doing oftentimes is an experiment. And that's setting the expectations. And that's why I'm using the word beta for Matt in the kitchen, because I'm starting to get the realization people seem to think that, no, it's a finished thing. No, we're still in development. But the 7 words that Talalik really flipped my brain on yesterday was, what joy are you going to get from this experience? And he set a precedent, he set an expectation, and it also took a lot of the responsibility off of me and put it back onto you, which is what this journey is, since we're not doing it in compensation in a traditional commerce way.
Yeah. So I think it'll be, this is just the beginning. You're more than welcome to, if you have ideas, definitely chime in. This is just mostly for you guys to think about. I no idea whether it'll happen or not, but it was a pipe dream, and it's less than a pipe dream now, but not a thing yet. So, but regardless of whether we have it or not, I kind of feel like we should start, no matter what happens with what it opened up in my mind is it would be great for us just to start testing it, thinking about it, like building a structure that we think would work, and just as a group, and just start building it up so that the next time it comes up that we can do something with it. Talak, and then Jason, and then Tony. And we're gonna go pretty quick because I'm gonna give everybody a couple minutes before Nick comes on.
Okay, just very quickly, just want to say that thinking back on my own education, the times when I was given a project to do or a thing to work out to then bring to the class and teach are the things I remember.
Yeah.
And I was given the project to find the most current scientific controversy at the time that was interesting to me, study it for 3 months,
right,
and then teach the class and be able to answer the questions from the students completely. Yeah. And I'll never forget it. And it's it's very important, and I think it works.
I think it's great. Yeah, absolutely. Jason.
I'm going to try and give you a 30-second answer. Hierarchy, I think, is most important. So what is our end goal? If the end goal is to teach to the test, then that's a different end goal than ensuring that the day is structured in such a way where kids can learn creatively, because based on what I know and what we've done with state standardized testing, making sure students are learning to take the test is not necessarily fun for them. So we gotta figure out that.
And I'm not interested in learning to take the test. I'm just learning the information they're going to get tested on.
Okay, cool.
Which is the distinct thing. Like it's not, I'm not trying to teach to the test of like, this is how you take a test. It's really just making sure that they're totally grounded in the concepts that they need to know. So it's what the test was intended to do, which was drive knowledge towards a certain angle. It's just that the problem is why everyone's so driven by the test is because the physical system of school is so inefficient that to get all that information into someone's head in the current structure is almost impossible. And so the way that you fix that is to redesign the whole thing so that there can be a lot more discussion. And I think that if we pull all that stuff out and build something completely different, it's just a much more efficient system in which I believe that, I don't know in the first year, but within a couple of years, we could get to a point where it's easier for the teacher. It's easier for the student. It's more fun. There's more free time. There's more discussion. There's more socialization. There's more of all of those things. And the test is going well. But you cannot do it. It is absolutely impossible in the current physical structure. Like that's a pipe dream. So you're in this rat race until you unconstrain yourself from the physical world. And it's like that. What I think about is, when you think about this, I always think about the constraints of the physical world. I love the scene in Contact, where they didn't tell her to put the chair in. They didn't tell her to put the chair in the spaceship that took her to another dimension. And so the whole thing is shaky, and she's just like, she's just falling, there's this incredible shaking motion. And then the chair disconnects from the disconnects and starts floating, and everything's fine. Like it's just, and so, like, it's like, oh, right. Because we were tied to the thing was what caused all the trouble. So when we get rid of that, I think that we end up in what feels like a lot of vibration can actually be something very common and easy. It doesn't have to be hard. And I think that we've created it that in a way that it makes it hard. Tony, last 30 seconds, and then we're going to give everybody a quick momentary break.
Okay, so my first point is there going to be an opportunity for students in other places to participate in these classes?
Not at first, just because it's a district. But the goal, I mean, once we start tearing this apart, and you have the future of education is going to be what my vision of the future of education. I don't know if it's going to be the future. Is that the students will come from all over the world. The teachers will come from all over the world. The experts will come from all over the world. There won't be any U.S. education versus European education versus Japanese education. There will be global classrooms, and it won't be of 300. It'll be, in any given classroom, there'll be 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 students, but it'll break into these little things. And that mixing that I'm talking about, based on 82% or whatever, that'll be different countries and different cultures and different, and there's this huge mix that goes on where we stop thinking about ourselves inside of the constraint of a nation state. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. So anyway, but yeah, in the current structure, it'll have to be students within a specific district. But I don't think that it has to be that way forever. Anyway, so we're going to stop the recording. I probably should have stopped a second ago. So we'll probably clip that part off. But anyway, we'll stop the recording and give everybody a break, and we'll start talking about Unreal. Shifting gears. So anyway, thanks. Think about those things, because I'll bring them up again, and we'll